All right, welcome back. I hope everyone had a nice lunch, albeit brief. We have a real treat this afternoon because we've got Bill St. Louis, the Executive Vice President and Head of Enforcement from FINRA, who's going to join us this afternoon. I'm going to invite Bill up in just a moment, but let me share a little bit about his bio. Bill St. Louis is an executive vice president and head of enforcement. In his role, he manages and directs FINRA's enforcement and national operations. He also leads the development of FINRA's national enforcement policies and procedures and oversees the prosecution of firms and individuals for disciplinary action. Before his appointment in 2023, Mr. St. Louis led FINRA's National Cause and Financial Crimes Detection Program within member supervision. In that role, he oversaw FINRA's National Cause Program, financial crime surveillance, and specialized investigative units covering anti-money laundering, cybersecurity, crypto assets, high-risk representatives, and vulnerable adults and seniors. He also oversaw FINRA's membership application program. Before leading NCFC, Bill was Senior Vice President and Firm Group Leader for FINRA member firms assigned to the Retail and Capital Markets Group firm groupings. In that capacity, he was responsible for managing the risk monitoring program teams for those firms, which includes the assessment of business conduct, financial, operational, and trading risks. Mr. St. Louis was previously the Regional Director of FINRA's Northeast Region and Director of FINRA's New York District Office. He also held senior roles in FINRA's Enforcement Department, including serving as the Regional Chief Counsel for FINRA's North Region. With all of that, Bill, we're so glad to have you. Please come join us on the stage.
Well, thank you for that. Much appreciated. It sounds a lot more than it actually is. But it's really a pleasure to be here today with all of you. I think I'll start by talking about some initiatives that we've launched in our enforcement department, and then I'll pivot and talk about a few cases we've brought this year, talk a little bit about a sweep we recently announced, and also talk about some issues that we're seeing in our pipeline of cases. So, with respect to the initiatives, in keeping with FINRA Forward and the spirit of continuous improvement, we've been looking at how we can possibly drive more transparency into how we operate as an enforcement department, definitely drive more efficiency in how we operate, looking to give firms more opportunities to be heard along the enforcement process, and also just generally trying to incentivize the type of behavior we want to see from member firms and registered individuals, associated persons. So let me start with a pilot that we started involving FINRA Rule 4530B. 4530B, as I'm sure many of you know, is a rule that requires firms to self-report violations to FINRA within 30 days of determining that there was a material violation that occurred. Essentially what we want to do is we want to give firms time to conclude their reviews, their internal reviews, without needing to balance a concurrent FINRA investigation. So a common thing that I hear, I think it's slightly exaggerated, is a firm files a 4530 on a Monday and they receive a very long 8210 letter by Thursday. So what we're trying to do is really leverage the firm's work and internal reviews and remediation steps, and allow them to do that free of having to deal with a concurrent investigation. We think giving member firms the face to do that will lead to expedited remediation, which after all is our primary goal here. What are we asking for in return? We want member firms to provide us with periodic updates as to the status and progress of their internal review. So this pilot is not going to prevent us from starting our own investigation if we decide we need to, and it's not going to prevent us from bringing in action if we decide that we need to. But I do think it's going to hopefully incentivize more self-reports. And after all, where firms have been the ones who've recognized the problem and self-reported it, they're probably best positioned to do the internal review, at least the first tranche or second tranche of it, better positioned than we are. So in the appropriate cases, we will be offering this pilot to firms that come forward. We have around 4 firms in the pilot now, and so far it's proceeding very well. We're getting a lot of good information, and things are moving at a fair clip. So another initiative we have is we've introduced a new introductory meeting. So historically, when a case gets referred to the enforcement department from member supervision or market oversight, examiners or investigators, we would send either, within 30 days of receiving the case, we would send either an initial notification letter informing the firm that we've received the matter onto our docket, or we would start the engagement with an 8210 letter. It was one or the other. What we're doing now is we're going to always send the initial notification letter, but importantly, what we're going to do is we're going to offer firms the option of having an introductory meeting with the staff. So what are the benefits of this meeting? At this meeting, we would share an overview of the enforcement department. We would talk about expectations for the process. To the extent we have additional investigative steps, we would talk about the focus of those investigative steps. But importantly, we would also listen to what the firm wants to say. Many times firms have very strong views and they're ready to share them almost immediately. We will be there, we'll listen to what the firm has to say and go from there. I think this not only provides more transparency into the enforcement process, it may also add some efficiency, because I can imagine there'll be scenarios where firms will say, we're ready to resolve this, or give us evidence very quickly showing us that this is more appropriate for informal disciplinary action, like a cautionary action letter, or no action whatsoever, what we call an NFA, no formal action whatsoever. So again, I think that's a positive step. Another initiative that we are launching is we're going to be introducing a new investigative findings meeting. So this is a meeting that we're going to offer firms where we are going to share our findings and also describe the evidence supporting those findings. It'll come fairly after we've largely concluded the investigation, and it will definitely precede any talk about settlement, and it'll also precede the Wells process. This does not replace the Wells process. We believe that this will be beneficial because we'll be giving the firm, at the meeting or after the meeting, an opportunity to tell us, well, what about this evidence you didn't consider, or you're misinterpreting this piece of evidence, or provide us with evidence that they may think we don't have, or maybe we in fact do not have. This will drive greater efficiency and earlier remediation, and I think the more we talk, the better. I think another benefit of it is that many firms say, as they move along the process, it goes from investigation, and then abruptly to settlement or Wells process. I think this meeting with firms will be a clean demarcation that we're ready to go into a new phase in the matter. All right? So we have a number of initiatives that are in progress that we're working on. These are not all of them. We're looking at our 8210 process, how we supervise 8210s, the scope of 8210s. But one that I wanted to spend a minute on is I think there's a benefit to providing greater clarity around what cooperation and or remediation steps qualify for credit. This is one of the most popular questions when we speak at industry meetings and gatherings. People are very looking for more information around extraordinary cooperation. In reality, cooperation and remediation and acceptance of responsibility almost always have an impact on what the sanctions are going to be. It's not extraordinary cooperation or bust, right? We consider the steps that firms and individuals take when we're developing sanctions. So in that regard, we're looking at our overall approach to credit for cooperation, and we may look to broaden the concept and move away from the word extraordinary. We hope to provide clarity and create more incentives for firms and individuals to cooperate with us, obviously. And so we're looking at it, and we're more to come on this issue, but that's the general gist of that one. I also wanted to answer a few questions that I commonly get about extraordinary cooperation. This year, we've so far given credit for extraordinary cooperation in 4 cases. One involved a 15C33 violation, inaccurate books and records, focus filings, and related supervisory violations. And in that case, we reduced the fine because we found extraordinary cooperation. And in another one involving rights of reinstatement, excess sales charges, and fees, we imposed no fine whatsoever. It was a restitution-only case because of the extraordinary cooperation. And a third one, it was a record-keeping case of failure to preserve electronic communications. We found extraordinary cooperation and we reduced the fine. And then finally, there's another case involving a failure to disclose markups and markdowns and related supervisory failures. We found extraordinary cooperation and we reduced the fine. And that last case involved a small firm, because another question we get all the time is, only the big firms ever get extraordinary cooperation credit. That is not true. That was a small firm. I think one of the reasons why people don't see small firms get credit for cooperation is they fail to factor in that extraordinary cooperation as it presently exists in our process can lead us to determine to not bring a case at all, not bring a formal case, bring no case whatsoever, or to resolve the matter with the issuance of a cautionary action letter. This year so far, there have been over a dozen cases where we closed them without formal action, in whole or in part because of extraordinary cooperation.
Hey, Bill, can I just ask a question? So in terms of the clarity that your team is going to provide, are you anticipating that would be through, a policy statement, a rule, like what format, or is that still being thought about?
We're still thinking about it, but every time we've talked about this, we've done it with a reg notice.
Yep.
So that might be the way we do it.
Okay, thank you.
Right. So in this case involving the small firm, there was a small firm among the dozen cases that we decided not to pursue formal action. It involved the firm's supervision vis-a-vis a principal at the firm, and the firm hired counsel to conduct a review. The firm proactively provided restitution, and the firm provided real substantial assistance to FINRA staff. And all of that added up, in our view, to extraordinary cooperation, and we decided not to bring a case against that firm. So more to come on these initiatives. Like I said, we're working on cooperation. We're looking at 8210. We're looking at other things as well. But FINRA Forward is very much in keeping with our processes over the years. Even before I was the head of enforcement, we periodically would always look at how we conducted ourselves and see if we could make some positive changes. So this is that and more to come. So let me pivot to talk about some of our 2025 cases. So on this Monday, we announced a $10 million settlement with First Trust Portfolios LP for providing excessive non-cash compensation in connection with the distribution of the firm's investment company securities. FINRA Rule 2341 prohibits member firms from making payments or offers of payments of any non-cash compensation subject to specified exceptions. And for example, the exceptions permit gifts that do not exceed the $100 per person annual limit, and an occasional meal or comparable entertainment, so long as the gifts, meal, or entertainment are not preconditioned on the achievement of a sales target. Our non-cash compensation rule is designed to protect investors by preventing recommendations from being influenced by excessive gifts and entertainment. So over the course of 6 years, First Trust repeatedly violated 2341 by providing to representatives of client firms gifts that significantly exceeded the annual gift limit, and meals and entertainment that were so frequent and extensive as to raise questions of propriety. So let me give you some examples of what we found in this matter. We found multiple instances of representatives receiving two courtside tickets to professional basketball games at a cost of approximately $3,200 for each pair. We saw that one representative received tickets to a total of more than 20 concerts and sporting events, including luxury suite tickets to an NBA All-Star game, all totaling more than $31,000 in value. And then over a 4-year period, another representative received meals and entertainment on dozens of occasions from various First Trust wholesalers, including tickets to luxury suites at multiple professional sporting events, concerts, and golf outings, all valued at more than $50,000. A First Trust wholesaler preconditioned tickets to a professional playoff hockey game on a client firm representative selling $1 million in First Trust UITs to his customers. These examples all well surpass the proposed increase of the annual gift limit to $300 that FINRA recently filed with the SEC. Additionally, individuals at the firm falsified internal expense reports and provided client firms with information about the non-cash compensation that omitted more than $500,000 worth of gifts, meals, and entertainment. So let me pivot to another area which has been a focus for us, AML and supervisory violations related to manipulative trading activity. One of our recent cases in this space was against VLOX Clearing, which provided clearing services to several foreign financial institutions that transacted in thinly traded, low-price securities through omnibus accounts. VLOX failed to establish a written AML program that could reasonably be expected to detect and cause the reporting of suspicious activity in light of the firm's business model and customer base. So for years, the firm didn't utilize any exception reports to monitor for potentially manipulative trading activity, and then implemented a single wash trade report. As a result, the firm failed to monitor for layering, spoofing, prearranged trading, or trading indicative of pump and dump schemes in low-price securities. And even when suspicious trading was identified, the firm failed to investigate these red flags. Finally, the firm failed to also commit adequate staff and resources to its AML program. There are other examples of cases with these types of failures. I'll talk about one more. We recently settled with Velocity Clearing. From 2019 until the settlement this year, Velocity failed to establish an adequate system to prevent and detect potentially manipulative trading. Over the course of 3 years, the firm had not enabled its prearranged trading surveillance, even after the firm received inquiries from other broker-dealers about potential prearranged trading by more than 40 of Velocity's customers. Over 4 years, Velocity closed more than 147,000 alerts identifying potentially manipulative trading by its customers without conducting any investigation into the trading or the customer's potential patterns of trading over time. The firm dedicated insufficient resources to reviewing surveillance alerts. Since July 2023, when the firm implemented a new surveillance system, that system generated approximately 15.2 million alerts. The firm closed the majority of these alerts without any investigation or action, and as of early 2025, over 5 million alerts identifying potentially manipulative trading remained unreviewed. So in that case, we imposed a monetary sanction and an independent consultant given the systemic nature of the violations. So I'm asking you to please continue to keep an eye on this area. We recently announced a new sweep or targeted review that we're conducting of firm practices regarding offerings of small capitalized exchange-listed issuers with business operations in foreign jurisdictions. There are more details about this review, this targeted review, on our website, and as is our practice, we will be sharing observation as the sweep progresses. So this year, we also focused on completing some cases referred to enforcement from some of our sweeps. I'll talk about 3: social media influencer sweep, options account opening sweep, and rights of reinstatement sweep. With respect to the social media influencer sweep, we closed out the sweep with a case against Webull, and consistent with prior cases from the sweep, we found that the firm paid influencers to promote the firm in social media communications, and many of those communications were not fair and balanced and had claims that were exaggerated or misleading in violation of our advertising rule. The firm also failed to review and retain the communications as required, and we also charged the firm with related supervisory failures. These findings and the charges that we ultimately brought are consistent with the other cases from the sweep. In our options account opening sweep cases, we settled the last case this year with Interactive Brokers. We found, consistent with other matters from the sweep, supervisory failures around the approval of options accounts, primarily where the firm used automated approval systems, notwithstanding red flags related to the customer's investment experience or profile information. And in our last rights of reinstatement sweep case, earlier this year, we settled with PFS Investments. We found, consistent with other matters from that sweep, that the firm failed to provide mutual fund sales charge waivers and fee rebates on mutual fund purchases. As a result, the customers did not receive the rights of reinstatement benefits to which they were entitled. This is one of the cases where, because of the firm's extraordinary cooperation, we didn't impose a fine, we only received restitution, and that's what we got with the other cases from that sweep as well. So what are some of the cases on the horizon? We continue to see cases involving vendor risk, cases where firms rely on a third-party vendor to provide information used to meet the firm's obligations without checking that the information the vendor is giving is correct. We also see firms getting correct information from vendors, but because of system compatibility issues or coding errors, the correct information is not being properly incorporated into the firm's systems. And we also see this issue the other way around, where firms are providing information to third-party vendors to incorporate into reports or documents that the vendor is creating on behalf of the firm, but there's some system compatibility issue or coding error that causes the vendor not to ingest or incorporate the correct information. We saw this recently in a case involving violation of Reg NMS Rule 606. The member firm was providing information to the vendor that prepared the 606 report on behalf of the firm, but because of a systems issue, the 606 reports prepared by the vendor did not include complete and accurate information. At the end of the day, a lot of this is around making sure, it's about testing and really making sure that the vendor relationships are working the way that you intend them to work, and also that the flow of information and the ingestion of information both ways is working the way you want it to work. Testing, testing, testing. We have more best execution cases on the horizon. We continue to be focused on firms' compliance with their best ex obligations, and that includes firms of various business models, including retail firms and executing firms. We're focused on whether firms are reasonably reviewing the execution quality of their current routing arrangements and that of competing markets. Specifically, we're looking at firms' regular and rigorous reviews to ensure that firms are considering the factors listed in the rule, including price improvement and speed of execution. In this general space, maybe a third cousin, I'll also touch on SEC Rule 606 issues, which requires firms to publish quarterly reports on their websites of their routing practices of non-directed orders. What we're seeing in the space, incomplete or inaccurate disclosures, firms failing to provide complete information about payment for order flow and transaction fees and rebates, among other things, reporting methodology errors, firms misclassifying order types, and supervisory system weaknesses, firms lacking robust review processes for 606 reports, no systemic verification of data accuracy before publication, and insufficient supervisory procedures vis-a-vis the rule. We also have, moving from Best Ex and 606 as far as possible. We also have variable annuity cases in our pipeline, and really they generally involve recommendations to purchase VAs or to exchange VAs that are not in line with the customer's profile, liquidity needs, or objectives. Cases also involve inadequate controls around identifying patterns of replacement activity and surrender charges, and failing to consider loss of benefits and riders when replacing or exchanging VA products. I'm going to take a few questions.
Okay. All right, well, we have 4 minutes. I have 2 questions, but before anybody jumps, are there any questions from the audience, if that's okay? All right, I'm going to give you one. This is going to be a total softball. How is the shutdown impacting the enforcement activities at FINRA, if at all?
Not really impacting enforcement.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we have, an active rule-making function, and we talk to the SEC quite often, and some of those conversations are continuing, some of them are on pause, but I'm not seeing in enforcement any direct impact.
Okay. Similar question. This one is more about the interaction between the SEC and FINRA in terms of the direction of the enforcement program. So we've heard a lot from the chairman about how they're reevaluating the process with enforcement, particularly around things like the Wells process is one example, thinking about collateral consequences. Yep. Are there similar conversations happening at FINRA, and or are there conversations between FINRA and the SEC on some of those topics?
Well, there are many conversations with the SEC. We definitely pay attention to what the SEC is doing, what they're changing, what they're looking at, and it informs our own continuous improvement, FINRA Forward objectives. But there haven't really been directives or conversations around, our following the exact same paths that they're following. I think it's prudent for us to pay attention to what they're doing, but that's really the full extent of it.
Okay. All right, perfect. That's it for me. Unless there's other ones, we're going to end on time, which is perfect. Bill, you are the man, because you didn't know, but we are right on time. So thank you very much.
I thought I had time to spare.
No, that was perfect. This is like, we have like 2 minutes, so this is perfect. Can we give it up for Bill St. Louis? Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Great to see you.
We're on break until 1:15. We'll be back for the proxy season hot topics. See you back in 15 minutes.
No.
To meet you. Maybe again.